When Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi locked eyes with Senator Richard Blumenthal in a packed Senate hearing room, her words cut through the air like a blade. You lied about your military status. The accusation, raw and unyielding, wasn't just a personal jab. It was a calculated strike at the heart of a debate over the soul of American justice. As Bondi faced confirmation for U.S. Attorney General, Blumenthal's charge that she enabled President Trump's weaponization of the DOJ collided with her fiery counterattack, exposing a rift where political loyalty and impartial law enforcement threatened to tear each other apart. In a nation craving fairness, this clash wasn't just about one senator's past or one nominee's future. It was a mirror held up to a system straining under the weight of distrust, where every question and every answer carries the power to reshape who we believe and what we stand for.
Of justice goes to the core of the integrity of our criminal justice system. And I think we can all agree that no individual, no group should be targeted simply because they are a political opponent or because the President of the United States has some personal animosity toward them. You've just said that President Trump is the most transparent president in history, tragically and chillingly. You may be right when it comes to criminal justice, because far from ending weaponization of justice, I would submit, Madam Attorney General, that President Trump has embodied it. And we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The Attorney General of New York, Tish James, my colleague, Adam Schiff, the former CISA director, Chris Krebs, the DHS former Chief of Staff, Miles Taylor. There's a list. And he has been transparent. In fact, 5 days before the indictment of James Comey, he put this post up as instructions to you. He didn't mince words. He was very open and public that you should indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay now. 5 days before you indicted, or a grand jury at your instructions indicted James Comey. I'd like to know from you what conversations you've had with President Trump about the indictment of James Comey.
Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
Did you
States.
see that
You're
post?
an attorney, you have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal, in 2017.
Well, let me ask you then, when you saw that
No
post,
one is above the law. That was your quote.
When you saw that post, did you talk to anybody in the White House?
I am not going to discuss any conversations I have, nor any investigations,
So
nor
you are unwilling
any
to tell this
pending
committee
cases.
about conversations with the White House
And if I may
regarding James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may
Let me show
continue,
you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
Actually, there were a lot of people there that night. That's a great
James
picture.
Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the
Well,
entire cabinet was there.
Did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down. Yes, 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any
I'm going to take
conversations
that
I've
as a
had or not
yes,
have with the
because
President
the
of the
American
United
public
States.
is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General,
The entire
whether
cabinet
you
was at that dinner,
took
too,
instructions
Senator.
from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice. I want to agree with my colleague, Senator Hawley, that weaponization of our justice system must end. That's the reason that I propose legislation, and I challenge him and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join me in legislation that would create a statutory right of action for people who are selectively or maliciously prosecuted for political reasons. It would codify your manual, the Department of Justice manual, on political prohibitions against political considerations in charging decisions, and prohibit the White House from intervening, President Trump and any other president from intervening in charging decisions. It would make reforms to the grand jury process. You've just said this grand jury was liberal. We should reform the grand jury process to ensure that the government is not abusing its power and authority, and it will require transparency and accountability reforms at DOJ so that you will and other attorneys general be held accountable for these kinds of decisions. Will you join me in supporting that kind of reform?
Senator Blumenthal, I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden, his son. And I think you just saw what Director Radcliffe just released.
You know, this is an effort to be positive.
If I can finish answering the question, I'm not going to yell over you. I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. But information that the Biden administration told them not to investigate Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine. I'm not going to be lectured to you about integrity by someone who lied about being in the military just to be elected a senator.
The merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett-Packard. It was a settlement that prompted criticism from the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize that settlement yourself?
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter. As you should know with a law degree, that all mergers, if I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
if I could finish. No, I'm answering the question.
Because my time is limited.
No, well then don't ask me a question. So,
let me just ask you,
as I said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
And Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly.
And moreover, two of her top officials were fired. Roger Alford and Bill Sinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
Let me ask you about another merger. The merger involving two home health care agencies on favorable terms, likely to drive up costs for millions of America. The Transportation Department's rule to provide compensation to travelers impacted by airline-caused flight delays, which was canceled. The merger of Skydance and Paramount, after Paramount's ownership took a number of steps favorable to the president. These kinds of mergers belie the claims that President Trump himself has made, that this administration will stop big corporate mergers that ultimately benefit the owners of those corporations rather than consumers or ordinary, everyday Americans.
Senator,
and let me ask you
wait,
about
you just listed, you just gave a
Well,
list
let me just finish.
of many mergers.
I have a
Can
question
you
for
talk
you.
to me about the issue with these mergers?
I do have a question. In the merger that took place,
Which
that was
merger? You've
approved
listed many.
involving American Express GBT, I understand that Brian Ballard,
Oh.
longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversation did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
you
not
lied.
asking
You admitted you
I am
lied
not
to be
accusing you
elected
of
a U.S. senator.
impropriety.
You
I'm asking
lied.
you
How
about
dare you? I'm a
conversations
career prosecutor.
with Mr.
Don't you
Ballard,
ever challenge my integrity.
had
I have
apparently-
abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General. And anything
You'll
with
answer that
my
question to
former
another of my
firm,
colleagues.
Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
The hearing, part of Bondi's confirmation process for Attorney General, quickly devolved into a high-stakes duel over the weaponization of the justice system, a phrase Republicans invoked to decry perceived Democratic overreach under Biden, while Democrats flipped it to spotlight Trump's alleged vendettas. Blumenthal, a vocal critic of the incoming administration, opened the fray by framing the issue as a threat to the integrity of our criminal justice system. He argued that no one, not even the president, should target opponents for political gain, directly challenging Bondi's defense of Trump as the most transparent president in history. Blumenthal submitted a damning public record. Trump's explicit social media posts and statements directing investigations and indictments against figures like New York Attorney General Letitia James, Representative Adam Schiff, former CISA Director Chris Krebs, DHS Chief of Staff Miles Taylor, and notably, ex-FBI Director James Comey. Zeroing in on Comey, Blumenthal highlighted a timeline that raised eyebrows. Just 5 days before a grand jury indicted Comey, Trump posted a blunt directive: indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay. Blumenthal demanded transparency. What conversations had Bondi, as Florida's top prosecutor, held with Trump about this? Bondi, stone-faced and invoking attorney-client privilege, refused to engage. "I'm not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the president," she repeated, a mantra that echoed through the room. Blumenthal pressed harder, noting Bondi's intimate White House dinner the night before Comey's indictment, with Trump seated just 2 chairs away, alongside cabinet members and advisor Hope Hicks. "Did you discuss James Comey with the president?" he asked pointedly. Bondi deflected again, insisting the gathering was large and official, not a cabal. "The American public is entitled to know," Blumenthal shot back, accusing the dynamic of outright weaponization of the Department of Justice. The senator didn't stop there. He pivoted to broader reforms, aligning with Republican Senator Josh Hawley, misspoken as Hawley in the heated exchange, in decrying politicized prosecutions. Blumenthal proposed bipartisan legislation, a statutory right for victims of selective or malicious targeting, codifying DOJ prohibitions on political charging decisions, barring White House interference, and overhauling grand jury processes for fairness, especially after Bondi dismissed the Comey panel as one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States. He challenged Bondi to support these measures, framing them as essential to ending the cycle of abuse. Bondi, however, turned the accusation inward with surgical precision. Dismissing Blumenthal's reforms as hypocritical, she countered, "I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden." She referenced fresh allegations from Director John Ratcliffe about Biden's team quashing Ukraine probes into his son, refusing to get in the gutter but vowing not to be lectured by someone lacking integrity. Then came the bombshell, tying directly to the hearing's explosive core. Bondi accused Blumenthal of lying about his military service to win election as senator, a nod to his 2010 campaign where he overstated his Vietnam-era role, later admitting the exaggeration. "You lied to me." "You lied to the American people," she declared, her voice rising. "I'm not going to be lectured by someone who lied about being in the military just to be elected as senator." The chamber fell into stunned silence, Blumenthal's face flushing as Bondi defended her own record. "I have abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial." The clash spilled into antitrust scrutiny, underscoring Bondi's potential conflicts as Attorney General. Blumenthal grilled her on approving mergers that critics said favored corporations over consumers. The Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Juniper Networks deal settled with minimal concessions despite DOJ objections. A home healthcare merger poised to hike costs for millions. The canceled airline compensation rule, and the Skydance Paramount tie-up, allegedly sweetened by steps benefiting Trump allies. Bondi deferred to her antitrust chief, Gail Slater, insisting all required court approval and remained pending. When Blumenthal alleged Slater objected to the HP settlement and that two top officials, Roger Alford and Bill Baer, were fired for resisting, Bondi shut it down. "I'm not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation." Blumenthal circled back to another deal, the American Express Global Business Travel merger, dismissed without court review after lobbying by Brian Ballard, head of the firm where Bondi once worked. "What conversations did you have with Mr. Ballard?" Blumenthal demanded, implying impropriety. Bondi erupted. "I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military status." She reiterated her ethical compliance, distancing herself from Ballard partners, and ended with a firm, "Thank you," signaling her refusal to yield. No formal outcomes emerged from this skirmish. The hearing adjourned amid unresolved tensions, but the exchange amplified partisan divides. Republicans hailed Bondi's poise and Blumenthal's hypocrisy, while Democrats decried Trump's shadow over justice. For Bondi's nomination, the barb sharpened scrutiny. Could she enforce impartiality when her loyalty to Trump seemed absolute? The American public, watching a system frayed by accusation and deflection, was left to ponder a timeless question. In the theater of democracy, who polices the police? As the gavel fell, one truth lingered. In battles over truth and power, the first casualty is often trust itself.